where do you think drumming started?
Oh, I mean, we've been tapping on our bodies and the way that we communicate. Rhythm's always been there. It's a part of everything, right? It's
Yeah.
just part of being human. Our heartbeat from the
Mm.
first second we're born. Um, and so I think that's just continues to evolve with what technology we have and with what subsequent ways we have to express ourselves.
Yeah. And what do you think of like the evolution of drumming to date? So like, there was the whole marching band thing, Ringo. Now you have guys such as yourself, Matt Halpin, Matt Gartzka.
I, uh, there's one quote that comes to mind is I remember Jim Keltner was getting interviewed and he's in a round table with like Thomas Lang and oh, who's that guy who drums for Jay-Z? Um
Not Aaron Spears.
not Aaron, Tony Reister.
Ah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Reister was in the round table and there was a couple other guys and Jim's like, I'm so glad I'm not starting out today because I could not compete with any of you guys. But I feel the same way. It's like, uh, it's so cool that like even in just the last 100 years that we've had with the modern drum set, how far things have come, like um and yet how timeless the instrument is, like we're still
Yes.
using similar snare drum designs to what they've been doing since the teens, the 19
Mm,
teens. We've been using the same double-headed drum design for toms and kicks that has been there since the late 20s, or I guess it would be, yeah, 20s. Um, basically things remain the same with little tweaks and twists here and there, but I mean just how cool that we have a timeless instrument that we can still push so far in such a short amount of time.
yeah.
Just amazing.
Yeah, it's crazy. What's more, yeah, like that's insane. And then you've got the hybrid stuff happening as well, which
That's kind of the evolution of the drummer's role too, as it used to be that if you were a live drummer, you could get away with just playing drums.
yeah.
You know, think about guys like Gadd or Bonham, any of these people that we've been mentioning from the past generations. Now, you have to be like Freddie Sheet is a really good example of this. He played with 1975, the Japanese House. He plays with Louis Capaldi now, and here's a guy who for many years was doing like MD work, which with Japanese House, he's figuring out all the live arrangements for these studio songs. He's having to program the singer's gear so that her vocal harmonies that were, done up real nice with stuff in the studio now that they come through live just as well. And then for any backing tracks and stuff like that, he's having to figure out how to run Ableton and not just run Ableton, but then figure out how to do redundant systems. So if computer one fails, now you run to computer two, and if computer two fails, you go to computer three. Like you have to be a musician, you have to be a conductor, you have to be a composer, a producer, you have to be a freaking IT guy, for the band. It's amazing, even though at the core we're drummers, just how many roles we have to play, and how important. In the 30s we were important because we were kind of like the band leaders.
Yeah.
With the big band, we were kicking a band was the phrase, the drummer kicks the band. Um, and I think in a way we still kick the band. It just looks a heck of a lot different than it did, 90 years ago.
Yeah. Um, is there a statement that has forever changed the way you approach the drums?
I've never thought about that. I don't necessarily know that I have anything to add more than just like stuff that we've talked about already, which is just like trying to be my authentic self
Yeah.
on the kit. Even though we pick up these elements from drummers that we love and adore, it's the amalgamation that we become that should be the voice that we bring to the drum kit, not just some regurgitated something.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. How would you define groove?
Ooh. As much as it is, yeah, I would say this. To me, groove is a matter of uh, making yourself a musician before you are a drummer.
Yeah.
So you're serving the song before you're serving yourself.
Do you think there are like elements that can help harvest that?
Listening, really learning how to listen. I loved music before I ever loved drums. And so for me, it's having a keen sense of what is every element doing in a moment in a song, and what do each of these elements serve to build this up, and then, as a composition, and then what can I bring to the table to elevate it further. Um, obviously I do a lot of stuff on Instagram for the views, so medium is really important.
Mhm.
Understanding your medium, understanding your customer and your consumer is it's like this is what copywriting is basically is I have to understand all of these different stakeholders that want this thing to go out into the world. And it's
Yeah.
the same thing with music. And by having such a deep history in the music world of all these different types of genres and of music that I've listened to all the over the years, all these different drummers who I've studied over the years, by really understanding the way that all of this works, I can apply those things to my own voice and my own situations to um, hopefully produce something that's pretty killer.
Hmm. If you were if you were in a band setting and you're they're like, "Hey Tim, we've got this song. Can you come up with drums for it?" How would you manage that? Like, are you a jam type guy, or are you more you need to sort of write it out and think about it?
So this reminds me of a story I heard about Matt Chamberlain. So Matt Chamberlain, one of the greatest studio drummers of all time, everything from the Wallflowers to Tori Amos and everything in between. And Bob Dylan. So, just thinking about that range of those three artists right there that he's worked with. Well, I guess Wallflowers and Bob Dylan are both Dylans. But uh a very big range sonically, stylistically, from one to the next. And when Matt works in a studio setting, I've heard very oftentimes you hire him, he'll listen to the song, and then he'll play what he plays, and he'll hand it to you and say, "There it is." And there's no edits. You get what Matt does.
Wow.
And I'm a little more flexible in that, like, if someone's like, "Hey, can you do this with this fill or do that with this fill?" Um, and I'm sure Matt accommodates these requests too, but it's just that you try to accumulate such a deep knowledge of music composition and that sort of thing that you can do that thing where you listen to the song a few times, you sit down, you know what your part's going to be, you nail it, and then that's what the part is because of your understanding of music, like it's right from the beginning. So, that's why, like, through some of this conversation I've said listening is just as important as playing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 100%. And it's like I tell my students as well, listening is it's a skill that you can develop, just like technique or certain fills you're trying to learn. It's something that gets better the more you work on that skill.
Yep. 100%.
Yeah, I think like it took me no, none of my teachers taught me that. I just sort of learnt it over time eventually. but it's something so like so basic and so fundamental. I don't know how I learnt it late.
Yeah. I, I'm trying to think of if I have a similar story on that. I guess it's just like it's like any other skill. You know, yeah, I feel like I'm going backwards with drumming on a technical level, you know, because like I started off in like hardcore and metal, which was just like all technical stuff. And then it was like, okay, let's go the complete opposite direction and just focus on groove and, you know, and but there's power in doing these things backwards or out of order or later in life because, you know, you developed other things earlier on. And because you develop these things in a different order than someone else might, that influences the way you're going to play on the kit, which again just helps add to that unique voice that you bring to the kit, which differentiates you from everybody else in the game, which is I think that's special.
Yeah, agreed. And it's funny because on my whiteboard of things I need to improve on is groove. So, for my own selfish reasons, how do you work on groove? How do you develop that?
My the biggest thing that I do with groove, one of the last things that I think is a basic skill that I learned was playing on the beat versus playing ahead or playing behind. I don't think I ever, for a long time, I probably heard it, but I couldn't feel it.
Yeah.
And what really helped me hone that skill and that helps me to continue to hone that skill is to play over songs that weren't necessarily recorded to a click, like
Okay.
a lot of my covers. So it's hard, but it is such an important lesson because then not only do you just learn how to play the form of the song, but you have to learn, okay, the fill from the last measure in the chorus one into verse two, they speed up at such and such a pace, and then they slow down at such and such a pace over the course of verse two. You know, it's all learning the ups and downs of a tempo through a song is a whole nother skill you got to learn. And
Yep.
it can be important because you're gonna if you wind up doing remote recordings, even though it might be done to a click, that pocket's gonna feel a little different from song to song, artist to artist. So having that minute understanding of time is integral to pulling off that, you know, that song, recording that song.
Yeah. It's funny. I've been trying to work on so you mentioned you've done video game music, right?
Hmm.
Um I'm a bit of a video game nerd, and there's some games where I absolutely love the soundtracks from. And there's this song from a game, and have you heard of the drummer Ricky Wellman?
No, not offhand.
I'd he's not very well known at all, but he is just if you search him in YouTube, you might be lucky to find like three videos.
No
But
kidding. Is he an older guy?
yeah, he's
No.
sadly passed on, but I cannot get the feel of his drumming in this song I'm trying to learn, and it's amusing and it's also frustrating, but like for a while I wrote out the drum part
Mm.
and I was just playing it as written without any swing, and I was struggling with it for so long until I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna listen, and that's it. I downloaded that Moises app and
Yeah.
isolated the drums as best as I could. And even though I can hear the swing he's playing, I still can't get the damn feel. It's I'll send it to you so you can check it
I'd
out.
love to hear it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a cool groove, and he does some amazing fills. But yeah, I wish he was still around because I would have loved to have
Mm.
done this sort of thing with him.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So, how would you define pocket?
I guess pocket and groove kind of go hand in hand, right? Because
Yeah.
pocket might be more that minute time thing,
Mhm.
and then groove is like the musicality of how you fill the space.
Yeah.
I guess that's how I would define it then.
Leading up to a performance, whether it's recording or live, do you have any mental, physical, or spiritual approaches to like get you in the zone?
Um, hmm. No. I think it's just, we talked earlier about kind of like sticking to the basics in life, and for me that's like walking and um eating, trying to eat right and drumming and that sort of thing. And it's just once those things are in place, then I'm ready to go at a moment's notice for whatever the moment calls for. So like turnaround time is really important for recording work.
Mm.
Uh I know someone that worked on a record and got shut out from working on the record because they cut or they called another guy during the same time period who sent tracks back uh 45 minutes after he got the request to play on them.
Ooh,
Yeah.
sheesh.
Now I can do same day or next day turnaround if
Wow.
a client asks for it.
Yeah.
Um, but 45 minutes is insane. But that's the kind of thing that makes you get hired versus not. So being able to quickly get into a zone. I think this is part of becoming a mature drummer is being able to get into that zone mentally, being able to immediately uh, chart a song and being able, like for recording, chart a song immediately and being able to immediately know what you're going to play over it if it's not dictated to you. And if it's dictated to you, being able to immediately learn that over two passes of the song. So these are the skills that'll really help make your career a lot easier.
Yeah. Can I ask what your process is? Say if someone contacted you as soon as we hang up and they're like, Tim, we want you to do this album. We've half of the songs we've written the drums for, half of the songs you've got free reign. What would be your process and what would be like a an accurate time frame for you to say, I'm ready to start tracking?
So let's say it's, 10, 12 songs. Then I'd say I think first I would start on the tracks where they already have the drums written because that's going to give me an idea of exactly the voice that they want brought to the kit. Um, and then I would work on the other songs. And I think the other part of starting with those ones that have the drums already on them is then you can take that extra time to just continue to listen to those songs without drums, and you're gonna start writing those parts. Whether it's uh, you're mindful about it or not. And so turnaround time for a full album, it depends. It depends on the complexity of the music and that sort of thing. Do I have to do a bunch of kit, turn and change outs or whatever? Do I need to set up a concert tom kit if someone wants a freaking Phil Collins thing or whatever? Because normally what I'll do is I try to streamline everything. So normally what I do is I have a four-piece kit set up. And so what's beautiful about that is I can say, all right, this song is sort of a tighter feel and I need higher tune toms. Okay, I'll put a 2012-14 in there. Oh, the next song's like a rock thing. Okay, I'll put a 22-13-16 modern kit in there because that'll do that thing. Oh, now it's like a vintage, old school feel. All right, and I'll grab a vintage 22 by 12 and a 13 by 9, 16-16, put that in there. That's the beauty of having four-piece kits is you can swap, 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 swap
Yeah.
without having any issue as far as having to change mics or anything like that. Um, Another easy way to streamline things. But yeah, time frame for let's say, I mean, dude, I've done 6 songs in one day. There are some days where I have songs so complicated I did one EP where songs were so complicated that it took me one day to do one song, and it took me a couple weeks to get an EP done just because I didn't have it. I just had other stuff to do during that time period. But I charged accordingly because it was a lot of work. There
Yeah.
was a record that they wanted me to do they wanted me to do like a Thomas Pridgen thing.
All
And
right.
and whew, man, that was I was pretty sweaty through that recording session.
Are there any albums or EPs or singles that are your happiest projects that people might be able to go and check out?
Honestly, I always ask people to just check out the Instagram because it's such a better uh indicator of what I'm doing now versus
Yeah,
what I've done in the past.
yeah,
And not just an indicator of my sound or my technical abilities, but also an indicator of my mood, generally.
yeah,
Even if I'm posting, because I repost videos from 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago still to fill in the gaps. And even if I post those older videos, the caption is going to be indicative of my mood at the time. Um and I only post videos, even if they're reposts, that feel right for me in that moment. So that's what I usually tell people to do.
okay. And in terms of recording, what sort of tools do you utilize? Like you mentioned charting things out. So do you like manually write them out on paper or do you use Guitar Pro?
I like the old school pen and paper thing
Yeah.
because then I can continue to make notes like, oh, I should do, if I get an idea in the moment, I can write a little note like, oh, do another pass and do XYZ things.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing I'll do is if it's something really important and I really want to have this thing down, I will import that song into, whether it's just into Dropbox or into Moises, and then I will play it over and over and over and over again using the audio from my iPad. So then I can literally just use my finger to go wherever I need in the song really quickly, as opposed to having a mouse and a keyboard right next to me and having to putz with whatever iTunes or Logic or something.
Yeah.
It's just a little quicker, and lets me pinpoint spots that might be more difficult a little easier.
Okay. And then the recording, like if we look at the actual recording process itself, are you using Pro Tools? What's your setup like?
Sure. So what I do is I run two Universal Audio X8P Apollos. So I got 16 channels to work with. Um, I've thought about expanding to 26, throwing like an 8 channel, or I'm so bad at math, 24 channels, so that I can have another 8 channels on there, but I'm not to that point yet. That's a lot of freaking channels, but six, I feel like I'm getting to the point where 16 feels a little limiting sometimes. Um, but basically I keep all the mics set up. I have two. I try to give people options sonically. So I have two kick mics, and I try to mic that in a way that you could use either one if you really wanted to, or you can use very versatile on what you can do with those two mics sonically. I usually use two top snare mics, one snare bottom mic. Again, so you can choose either or on top, or use the pair of them in tandem. Um, couple tom mics, a couple overheads, and then I would say the most important part is having three different room mics: a short, a medium, and a long room mic.
Okay.
Because now, between the variation that you can achieve from kick mics to snare mics to room mics, you should be able to get whatever mood you want to set sonically in your song with those microphones. So that's really important to my process. Um, that all runs into Logic. Mainly, I'm kind of old school in that I use a lot of Waves plugins. Um, I also have ventured out a little bit now. I'm starting to work with like oh gosh, what's that brand that does like the distressor and the Fat Boy or whatever? The
Oh,
main, that distressor
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
I have the UA version, but I bought their version of the distressor plugin. So I'm starting to branch out a little more from Waves, and there's a couple other plugins I use. And stock Logic plugins too. Those are great. They really did a nice compressor that they added to Logic Pro X. I always love their EQ, the stock EQ, and then they also have a great vintage EQ collection. They do like an API style EQ. They do a Pultec So there's a lot of great tools already in that software. Um, yeah, and then I'm a WeTransfer guy. I used to be a Dropbox guy for a long time for delivering files, but WeTransfer is just so easy and it's free.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think that does that cover. I think that
Oh
covers the whole
yeah,
signature
that's
line there.
start to end. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Do you ever get contacted to just do MIDI drums, or is it always um like proper recorded
So
performances?
my thing is real drums.
Yeah.
No samples, no MIDI mapping, no nothing. Now, I understand that that limits my capability. There are other guys who are really good with uh, programming or drum machines, MPCs, these sorts of tools, and that makes them marketable in a whole nother way. Um, I do my fair share of programming and that sort of thing. It's just not something that I put out there as a skill set because I don't feel like I'm on the level where I, want to do that. I don't even think I would enjoy doing doing that for
Yeah.
other people. So yeah, that's a big thing too. So yeah, I when people contact me, they're getting real drums, baby.
And I almost forgot to ask this, so I want to go back to it. With you know how he said 6 songs of drums would give you the drumming, and then the other 6 you got to come up with your own. What would your process be like for coming up with your own drums after hearing what they've given you for the other 6 songs?
It might have to be a little communication.
Yeah.
I'd probably have a phone call and be just like, do you want me to just take that voice and play with it? Maybe let's say they could only afford to have someone like Matt Chamberlain or Steve Gadd or whatever play on the first 6. Um, what do they want me to do with the other 6? I would say I'd have a conversation and ask, do you want the playing to be the same? Do you want the production to be the same? The tones to be the same? What do you need the same? What do you need different?
Yeah.
And then just using that feedback to really dial in exactly what they need from me.
Yeah. For me, like I'm just trying to put myself in those shoes. And you mentioned if Steve Gadd played on the previous 6 songs, I'd be thinking, shit, I hope they don't want it to sound like Steve Gadd.
Yeah, I probably should have said like Joe Schmo because I don't think I will ever be in a situation where someone's going to call Steve Gadd and then call me. That would be stupid.
On a quick side note, his book Gadaments is amazing. If you like to
I
just
keep
sit
hearing
on it,
good things.
yeah. Um, you've got like a massive list of services on your website. Would you be happy to go into that and what you can offer people, basically how you can help?
Oh, sure. You like, so you want to talk about your, So, okay. So, if you go to my website, you're going to find that huge page of consulting work. And basically what that's serving to do is it's like a resume. It's another version of a resume. If you go on LinkedIn, you're only going to get a little bit of detail about all the freelancing work I've done. If you see my resume, you're only going to get that little bit of the same bits of detail. Here it's a little more expansive, which kind of tells you who I've worked with and what I've done. And I actually have to update that quite a bit. But there's like 4 general areas. Copywriting, which that was what I went to college for. Then you have social media marketing, which is something that I learned after college and building my own personal brand and then working with different brands. Uh, there's like brand development and product development. So designing a drum shell, designing a drum top to bottom, designing, working on the logo for a brand or the finishes of a drum that a brand might carry, all of these things. And then the last is like retail side, continuous improvement type of stuff. So how do you run the store a little better? How do you increase your general profit margin? Super boring businessy stuff. And I've been real fortunate to work in all of these areas and with a lot of drum specific clients. So Yeah, basically, I try to put that stuff on my website for the same reason that I put my videos on Instagram, which is hopefully it'll attract the right people. And moving forward, one of my goals is if I'm able to get a podcast off the ground, I'm gonna also then add a blog section to my .com for the sole purpose of driving more traffic to the website through search, just SEO
Yeah.
tactics, so that hopefully it attracts even more people that would be interested in these things that I do. Um, so that's basically the purpose of that, and I guess it's just to say that, like, as much as a a slew of social channels are a necessity as a drummer, I think,
Mhm.
today, um, it can also be powerful to spend the for me, I think it's about 120 bucks a year to have a .com. And it depends on a lot of things too. How many there's a lot of Tim, despite it not being that popular a name, there are plenty of Tim Baltes stateside. There's a pastor, there's like a college professor, and then there's like a video gamer in like San Francisco. So I'm competing with particularly, and there's a real estate guy. So like particularly with the real estate guy and the professor and the pastor, I'm competing in search rankings with them. And because of the traffic I've driven to my website, because of the traffic I drive to my socials now, if you Google Tim Baltus, 90% of the first page is going to be me, and the top stuff is me, and that's important. Um, so like I have a buddy, a buddy I mentioned earlier, Sahan Jayasuriya. There's not a lot of Sahan Jayasuriyas hanging around, so it's a little easier to get away as far as SEO tactics are concerned. It's a little easier to get away with, you know, do you really need sahanjayasuriya.com? Do you need that URL? Probably not. You could make it something different. And do you really have to fight as hard as I try to fight to keep your name up in the search rankings? Also, again, not as hard as you might think. So, it's balancing these different things and having a very good understanding of, how might my name rank in Google, depending on if I had a website or how I use my socials and that sort of thing. That works like that.
Okay. And so you've got all that with, like, that's a whole package in itself. Then you have teaching as well, right?
I do, yeah. So on top of all the businessy stuff that I do teaching in person sometimes, and then mainly online. And so whether I have students who come to me who just want to learn a few more chops. I've got students who come to me and say, "Hey, how do I go from working a full-time job to making music the focus of my life?" I have professionals. John from Fits and the Tantrums was a recent client. I've had plenty of other awesome pro level clients who come to me for, instead of them of how do I get to the pro level, they're saying, how do I use my life and my work to bolster my social media presence and to create more different opportunities for me. So that's the beauty of having all that huge business side, is being able to say, all right, how do we employ social media to help you here if you're a big dog, or how do we use social media if you're just starting out to grow your brand. um, and then copywriting is obviously a big part of that, understanding how to write a good caption, and how to optimize that caption for different social networks. And then because of the background I have with product development and retail stuff, that's really the understanding of building a business generally.
Yeah.
So if someone needs to commodify what they do on a day-to-day basis, I'm able to strategize with. I had a guy the other day who, uh, right now he's working a manual labor type of job with a little bit of administrative stuff, but he wants to do music, full time. So now it's a matter of, well, what are options that are available to you, based on your skills and interests. So, we brainstormed a whole thing. It's like, well, it might be really helpful if you got a little. He's got a degree in, I think, psychology, but what if
Wow.
you also, tap into, maybe getting like a tech degree in 2 years, so you can get a job that you can work from home doing
Yeah. Yeah.
and that pays. because he's got a mortgage, he's got a wife. I think I think he might have some kids. I'm not sure if he's got kids, but you got responsibilities.
Yeah.
He's got a home studio he's building out, so that's going to help him. But yeah, this is just kind of trying to talk through. This is how all of those business skills turn into lessons.
Yeah.
For any drummers is having these conversations to strategize. What are your goals? How do we get you there?
It's crazy. It's not even just teaching that you're offering, but it goes into basically mentorship and coaching, which is great to have that. Like someone might come to you for drum lessons and then end up having this whole like progression through life through you.
100%. I have clients that will come to me literally like, I have like 3, maybe 4 basic tracks. There's like just learning how to play drums. There's learning how to record drums. There's learning how to use drums on social media, and then kind of even further businessy career stuff. And I'll have clients that come to me and they want to cover all of it, and that's super fun for me because then it keeps it interesting.
Yeah.
Um, and but yeah, so I have one of the things I want to do now is I have a slew of I write all my notes for my clients before we even talk, so that we can just have a conversation
Yeah.
during our hour together instead of them having to chicken scratch everything out.
Yeah.
And partly it's a little selfish because what I can do is I can use all that content later to teach other folks.
Yeah.
It's a good thing because it goes further both for me and for them.
Oh,
So
definitely. Yeah.
yeah.
Because like if you're referring to sort of like picking and choosing the repeat elements from one client, that's great. It gives you more mental bandwidth or just time to prepare more tailored content to that person.
And that's exactly what it is. And I try to write, I'll take their questions. I always get questions before their lessons. And then I try to, if it's something very personal, obviously, then I'm not going to put it into my notes for people. But almost always, I can answer the questions in a way that I can put them into my notes. So, it's like for one lesson, I want someone to walk away with basically what's a Harry Potter novel worth of notes, and it gives them it's a lot of value. I think it's a lot of value, and then they can take it home, and we can take it if someone comes back to me, whatever it is. Sometimes it's 2 months later, 6 months later. I'll have people come back to me after a year and say, hey, can we do another hour? Even after they've gotten through all of that, there's still more to learn. So I don't really think that it takes away from my work as an educator either.
Yeah. How do you just like from teacher to teacher, how do you find people? For example, I have a lot of students who don't practice. What's your student base like? Are they usually quite on the ball with that? Because it seems like you're dealing with some serious people who
And that's the benefit of kind of educating at this level is it's usually people who have gotten over the hump and are far enough that they're going to be the people who are going to implement these practices and stuff. And
yeah. Okay.
I got a few. there's uh there's one guy I love this guy. I gotta look up his name now. He's a great drummer. Great drummer. Uh, Leor Manelis, and he's a drummer out in Colorado. And he's played on some pretty big stuff. And a great drummer, great guy. And I kept trying to like get him to get into drum bus processing. And I'm just like, like, dude, just please put your drum tracks in a drum group and just throw like an API 2500 bus compressor on there, and it's gonna be cool. Just trust me. And months of working with him, I could never get him to use a bus processor. But I'll tell you, his drum tracks sound great, and he'll still send me stuff that he's working on, and I have no complaints. His drum tones they've changed a lot since we started working together, and they're despite having no bus processor almost ever on his drums, they sound awesome. So
maybe you should do the sneaky, just run it through one of your your presets or whatever, and just be like, this is what it could sound like too.
Yeah, I mean, but this is the thing, I guess, it's just to get back to it. It's like, I can, I'll teach every, element to people. And then again, this is the beautiful thing about drumming and really as an extension engineering and producing your own music is that you take what you want, you don't have to take what you don't want. And
Yeah.
Leor was very vocal that he did not like the act of bus processing and and that was fine because again he's finding his voice now as a mixer and the result speaks for itself. He's getting cool drum sounds. It might not, he might not get to the final result in the same way that I would get to the final result, but the final result that he gets to is anything I could hope to get for, through my own process.
Yeah. When I've got the studio finally built and I start to actually take steps to record my own drums, I'm gonna have to have a few sessions with you with all that.
Yeah, that'd be sick, dude. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd love to do it.
Plus all that other stuff too, like the social media side of things. It'd be great to learn because I hate social media. Like I hate having to upload. I've got all my notifications like off for everything, even WhatsApp. Like I don't know. I just like to not have my phone buzzing away for things.
Mhm.
But I think learning how to utilize everything properly and maybe getting into better habits of posting and stuff will change that. So I'll definitely be
It's a good thing.
yeah.
Yeah, I'd love
Yeah,
to
I know.
connect and talk about it. This is the thing is it's whatever you do with social specifically, again, it's the same way as drumming. We started drumming because it's fun. And so you have to have that same, not necessarily the same, but you have to have enough fun posting on Instagram to make it worth doing it all. So, again, that's why I post some of this comedy stuff, and that's why I try to take the approach that I'm trying to build more community in drummers, through drummers, and that makes this easier and more rewarding to
Yeah.
do. So it's just a matter of finding out what lights you up, when you do socials.
I'm just trying to think. Nothing's really coming to mind for me. I
Well,
like
I mean,
watching other people's stuff.
sure, and you
Yeah.
can learn from that. Then it's like, do you take it to the level of engaging with them? Trying to have a conversation about, hey, how are you getting that drum tone? Or hey, how did you know tell me about that fill or whatever, or like, where's your inspiration from? These are the types of things that uh lead to relationships, and
Yeah.
this is what I always tell people is the internet's a great tool, social media is a great tool, but you never want to as best you can, you never want to leave that relationship there on social media. And by that I mean comments back and forth should lead to DMs back and forth, which should lead to texts or WhatsApp text back and forth, which should lead to Zoom hangs back and forth, which hopefully result in real hangs in the real world.
Yeah.
And that's the way that this turns from just another little itty bitty interaction online to a real deal friendship.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you never know
Um,
where that's going to take you. I've had plenty of people try to get me gigs or give me opportunities through just because we're homies that met through the internet and now we're drum friends.
yeah. So again, just backtracking. So that was the teaching side. Then you obviously offer recording services.
Yeah, and this is kind of, dude. I mean, we're talking about there are so many freaking services I offer, right? And this is kind of, this is the I don't know, the good thing or the woeful thing about having to be a drummer today is that you have to have all these different skill sets if you think you're going to survive, doing music. Um, Recording is just another element to that. So I can teach you how to play drums. I can teach you how to record drums. I can teach you how to put those videos on Instagram, and I can teach you how to build a business out of that. But I can also record drums for your band. I can also manage your social channels. I can also do the copywriting for you. I can also build the website that you want to build for your personal brand.
Wow.
I can teach you how to play drums if you're on the front end, if you're learning it, having all these different skills. The more you diversify your skills, the more you diversify the services that you're able to offer, and the more a chance you have at being able to build a little something out of what you're doing.
I've got one more question concerning gear. So I've noticed you've got quite a bit of vintage, uh, quite a number of vintage kits. What have you got exactly?
So I've been doing this since I was 15. I'm 32 now. You can do the math. I owned something like 250 plus drum sets during that time, and
Whoa.
three or 400 snares plus, not all at the
Wow.
same time. But I am very fortunate to live in between Milwaukee and Chicago. And Chicago, we had the Ludwig factory here for a very long time. Slingerland drums were made here for a very long time. Camco drums were made here for a very long time.
Wow.
Just east of the city, we had Leedy drums that were made here. And then near in the Midwest, in Ohio, we had Rogers drums were made here, just a few hundred miles away. And then for the European market, we're very fortunate that in Milwaukee, we had a big retailer of European drums. So 60s and 70s Sonar pops up, very frequently. Premier stuff pops up very frequently because of that retailer. So really on all fronts of the vintage market, it's very, very, very strong here. And so I, for a long time, would just hop on Craigslist, hop on Facebook Marketplace and the like, and see if I could find drums for cheap that I could flip and make an extra buck on.
Yeah.
And in turn, I would take those drums for a few weeks and I would play them and make videos with them. And
That's cool.
you learn a lot about them that way, and that was another tool in my repertoire to help me really develop an understanding of what these different drums do and why you would use one over another and that sort of thing. So, um, as far as vintage goes, I have a WFL / Slingerland kit, which is it's old moldy is what I affectionately call it. It's got a 22 by 12 WFL kick. It has a 13 by 9 Radio King tom and then a 16 by 16 WFL floor tom. I have on the newer side of things, I have a Ludwig Classic Maple kit. It's a downbeat kit in Heritage Green lacquer. I bought that kit directly from Ludwig and then immediately modified everything on it. I had the bearing edges redone, took and I basically mimicked CNC's Gladstone edge on the toms and the kick. And then I took the gaskets off the floor tom and tom lugs. I replaced the 2.3 millimeter hoops on the toms with 1.6 millimeters, so a little more vintage style.
Yeah.
And those are the best sounding wood drums I've ever owned in my life.
Wow.
So another example of, I guess I do know what I'm doing from time to time. And so those are great. I think I have a Ludwig Revet, which is the Keystone shells, oak maple, 18 by 12, 12 by 8, 1414. Those are a kit that you can only buy through Revival Drum Shop in Portland, Oregon.
Oh wow.
I have a Franklin Drumco kit. That's one of the companies I've worked with. That's I wanted to do something a little different, so it has a lemon strata lacquer, which is to mimic a finish that Ludwig did in the 70s with their standard series. It kind of looks like a bumblebee. And I have a 20 by 12 kick, a 16 by 12 kick, because I always wanted those sizes. Those are harder to find. And then just 12 by 8, 14, 14, and then a 14 by 4 snare. And then the big thing that I'm very fortunate. The concert toms are all Jenkins Martins. Scott from that company has been very kind and basically let me borrow this giant set of concert toms because he doesn't have the room at his house. And then I have a North drum set for the next month from a store that I worked for because they don't have any room to store it. And so that's played in my favor pretty well here. And then probably the most important drums worth talking about are the metal drums and drum sets that I have right now. I've owned basically every metal classic metal Ludwig snare you can own. I own a lot of them still. So I have 14 by 5 aluminum Superphonic, 14 by 6.5 aluminum Superphonic, all vintage 80s and 70s. I have a 90s 6.5 Black Beauty. I've got a 1960 chrome over brass Super 400. So I run the gauntlet. I've owned copper drums, steel drums, the whole 9 yards. And this 14 by 7 aluminum that we built with them. So I have a downbeat kit essentially and a super classic kit, big
Okay.
kit and a little kit. And those are cool. Yeah.
One last thing.
Yeah.
I've noticed some kits. I can't remember if it was the same kit I saw more than once, or if it was different kits, but you had some with some interesting finishes and the kick drum heads looked painted.
Mm-hmm. So I work with a gal down in Austin, Texas, mainly. I've worked with several artists around the world, but mainly I work with a gal who goes by Megan Palin, Meganpailin. I think it's actually pronounced Megan Palin. And she's in Austin, Texas. She's been painting heads for me for 6 or 7 years now. And we have a great working relationship. And the reason why I do the painted heads thing is plain heads look boring on video. So, this is a way for me to visually make it interesting. And what I learned is depending on the paint, particularly if someone paints using acrylics, which are a little physically thicker they sit thicker on the head, it adds a really pleasant, not it's subtle, but pleasant dampening to that front head.
Okay.
So it serves a couple purposes, but it's more than anything just aesthetically. Her work is so good. She understands proportions and what things need to look like on a drum head to be appealing,
Yeah.
visually. And I love her work. I'll always champion her work. She's just killer.
Yeah, it looks amazing.
Thanks.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or yeah, anything at all?
No, dude, just like thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And this is super fun to connect and talk for so long. And yeah, if anybody ever wants to reach out to me, Timbo from Kino or timbaltes.com, give me a holler. I'm always down to talk drums and drum stuff.
Thank you so much for your time. Like we've been chatting for ages. It doesn't feel like it has been going for as long as it has, but we've covered so much. I'm really, really grateful for you being on here and reaching out as well. So thanks so much, Tim. And I'll definitely be in touch for like your teaching, especially with the recording side of things, and definitely going to need your help with the social media side of things. Hopefully you can turn me around and,
We'll make it fun.
get
We'll
me
make it
into it.
fun.
Yeah. I'll
Sounds
definitely
good.
be hitting you up soon for that. It's
Awesome.
definitely going to help with the podcast too, so it's yeah.
Right on. All right. Thank you, brother. Have a good day. We'll catch you soon.
Yeah, we'll do, Tim. Keep in touch. Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.